Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Wednesday, May 12th. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. The Minnesota game is in 113 days. The game against Michigan in 199 days. Yes, we are under 200 days until the Michigan game. The countdown on the final decision for the top prospect in the entire nation for the class of 2021, that countdown is a little less certain. The Buckeyes did, however, get a little bit of good news this week in their pursuit of defensive lineman JT Tuimoloau. Buckeye Scoop's Bill Greene just wrote about that and several other interesting nuggets this week. He joins me this morning. Bill, what did you see this week that was encouraging about Ohio State's chances to land Tuimoloau?
Well, I've always liked the position they're in. I like the relationship. Started early with Hartline, actually, and then passed off to Larry Johnson. JT Tuimoloau, I've always been told his number one motivation is to be groomed, to be developed, to play in the NFL. And when you look at the University of Washington, their track record for that is abysmal. So to me, he was always not staying home. And if he was going to stay home, he'd have made that decision long ago. So you've got the Larry Johnson NFL thing going for you. Then when you're looking to come a couple thousand miles from home, you're looking for a little bit of familiarity. So you're not the Lone Ranger there. And, there was a friendship with G. Scott. The trust issue with G. Scott Sr. as well as Jr., who can tell him, hey, my son's been here a year, loves it at Ohio State, loves the coaches, blah, blah, blah. There's a relationship with Emeka Egbuka. So I think the familiarity works as well as the NFL angle, be coached by Larry Johnson. Reasonable chance you're going to fight for the playoffs every year. With Washington, you might make it once a decade. So I've always felt all that looked great for Ohio State and had them in the lead position. And then, you hate to prop up other competitors of ours in this business, but hey, I call it the way it is. And Brandon Huffman is the best in the business, one of the best in the business, straight shooter, great guy. And he has had the goods on this recruitment from day one. The family trusts him. They are not going to let Brandon Huffman get this one wrong. There's no way. So Brandon's going to know, as long as Brandon has Ohio State in his crystal ball pick, he's coming to Ohio State. When Brandon flips it to someone else, probably time to get out the whiskey because it's probably over. So I would follow Brandon on this. And I know he's a competitor of ours, but he's a friend of mine. And aside from that, he's great. And he's going to get this right. So I wouldn't be too concerned with the confidence meter. That's a marketing ploy to keep Oregon, Washington, Bama, keep those message boards hopping. If you put a confidence meter of 9 on it, then those people aren't going to follow you. So I would follow Huffman's pick, not follow the confidence meter, and go from there. I mean, Brandon will have the goods on this more than I will. That's for darn sure, and I readily admit it. So I think there's an easy tell on this to where JT's going, and I think it's Brandon Huffman. Now, timeline, man, I don't know. How many days was it to the Minnesota game, Tom?
Yeah, 113 today.
Well, he'll decide in the next 110, 112 days then, because he'll want to play against Minnesota.
Yeah, it seems like, he's probably going to wait till he takes those visits in June.
Yes.
But then you're going to have to make a decision before camp opens on August 4th or so, and probably maybe even a little earlier than that to get enrolled. So, yeah, it is. The window is narrowing, but right. definitely not sure where it is. But yes, we have talked before about recruiting being all about relationships. That's true with coaches and players, but also sometimes it's true of recruiting analysts and players. If you know the guy who knows the guy,
yeah,
you know who to listen to. Brandon Huffman.
So.
Brandon Huffman. For you, if you guys don't know, he is a West Coast analyst for one of the other networks. But so that's why he's closer to JT Tuimoloau because he
lives in Washington and he's known the family forever, and he's really the only one that they speak to on a regular basis. So the trust they have in Brandon is pretty evident, and they're not going to let him get this wrong. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, he is closer to JT Tuimoloau because he is quite literally closer to JT Tuimoloau. Yes. Yeah. So that's some encouraging news for Ohio State on the number one player for the class of 2021. The news was not quite so good this week with transfer linebacker Henry To'o from Tennessee. There had been a flood of positive sounding news for the Buckeyes, both from within our staff and other sites that cover Ohio State. And then all of a sudden he ended up at Alabama. So can you give people some idea how that all played up with him ending up with the Crimson Tide not all that long after he seemed pretty much destined for Columbus?
Yeah, if you look back in the beginning, I mean, I think his dad was pretty clear, that Alabama was the choice. That's where the dad wanted the kid to be, and it was pretty much where the kid wanted to be. The hangup was, would he be instantly eligible at Alabama, and how would the NCAA rule on that? And, they still haven't ruled. So I thought the kid, would not take a chance on being forced to sit out a year and go to Alabama as long as it was uncertain. But he defied that logic, and he is now headed to Bama, and he does not know that if he's going to be eligible or not next year. I'm sure Nick Saban has assured him that he will be. But Ohio State was the clear second choice here. And if the SEC would have ruled against instant eligibility, he would have been at Ohio State. So, and it just looked like the longer that it drug on, it looked like Ohio State was going to be the winner. There was a lot of optimism on the Ohio State side of things. And I think they felt they had him and were getting him. So, but Nick Saban, Tom, it ain't a hobby for him, so he knows how to recruit. And, he's not winning those titles by accident. So, he got the player. He wanted him, and he got him. And, you tip your hat to Nick Saban. The interesting thing to me is what happens in the next couple of weeks if the SEC rules transfers are not instantly eligible. And Henry has to sit out a year. What happens then? You know what I mean? Does he go to the NCAA and say he was lied to, he was deceived? I'm going to Ohio State, and I want a waiver to play right away. I think he would have grounds there. So we'll see. I mean, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but if I'm the kid, and that's how I would play it, there's no way Henry To'o wants to sit out next year. He wants to play next year, get his name into that NFL draft, get drafted highly, and then head to the league. So he is not going to want to sit out next year. And if he gets forced, they try to force him to sit out next year, there's going to be a holy heck to pay, I believe.
Yeah, there is not a whole lot that feels super predictable about anything in college football right now between NIL and transfer portal and all of that stuff. So yeah, that's going to be another fascinating one to keep your eye on. One thing you can always say is something crazier has always happened. And whatever you're talking about, there's something crazier has happened than that in recruiting or now the transfer portal. So yeah, you can never say never. Your bank blog this week included updates on probably close to a dozen players. I just want to touch on a couple of them here, and then Buckeye Scoop members can find the rest of the information on our Ask the Insiders board. But let's start with Dallin Hayden. He's a 4-star running back from Memphis. Can you share a little bit of a scouting report on Hayden and what you're hearing about him in the Buckeyes? Yeah,
I think he's a good all-around back, kind of a J.K. Dobbins type. I think they like him a lot. I think he fits the offense really well. And I think he's going to be the running back in this class, I believe, although, you hate to make too many predictions right now with all these visits coming up in June, and those things are going to tell the tale. But for me, just the way this thing is starting to roll, I think he's going to be the guy. I think Hayden's going to be the guy in this class. I don't think they're going to take 2 running backs in this class. I mean, they've got a crowded room right now. Now, that could change, you know what I mean? If one of those guys or 2 of those guys jumps in the portal in the near future, then they would shift and they would take 2 running backs then in this class. So a lot up in the air right now. And I think those June visits are really going to clarify things. But, gun to my head today, running back in this class, I'm going with Hayden.
And the other guy I wanted to ask you about was Omari Abor, if that name sounds familiar. He's a 5-star defensive end from Duncanville, Texas. And Bill and I just talked about him a week or 2 ago on the show that he and I did with Greg Powers from Dave Campbell's Texas Football.
Right.
If it sounds like maybe, when we talked to Greg, it sounded like Abor was more or less perceived as a lock to go to Oklahoma.
Right.
Now, maybe it sounds like that may not be quite so set in stone.
Yeah, I think things are shifting there, and he is absolutely not a lock to Oklahoma. I think the winds are changing toward Ohio State, away from Oklahoma. Again, we want to see how these visits sort out, but I'll tell you, I mean, over the years, you go back to Tressel and then to Urban, and now with Ryan Day, their hit rate on these official visits is unbelievable. And, they didn't have a lot, we haven't had too much of a history with Ryan Day, but I don't see that changing. And these out-of-state kids come to Ohio State, and the expectations are lower than what they find. They think they're coming to the middle of Kansas, and then they end up seeing that campus, and it's a wow. Then they take them downtown, and it's like, oh my gosh, what a great city. You've got the Real Life Wednesday program, the academic part of it, the staff, Larry Johnson, they're great recruiters. I'm just telling you, he is not an Oklahoma lock. And gun to my head, if I had to make a choice, I would choose Ohio State right now for Omari Abor.
That would, Larry Johnson has quite a string of 5-star defensive end signees recently. That would be another big one to add to that list. Last thing I wanted to ask you about, you and Mark Givler are just wrapping up your podcast series on the Scoop 100. That has been a fantastic listen. I just listened to the 20 to 11 episode right before we hit record. Ton of great information, both on the players and where they may end up playing their college ball as well. You can find that by searching Buckeye Scoop or Gives in the Bank. It's on the Gives in the Bank podcast, but if you search Buckeye Scoop on your podcast platform of choice, you'll find it that way too. One of the guys you just talked about was Will Johnson. He is the 5-star corner prospect from Michigan, currently committed to the Wolverines, but they just had a staff shakeup again. They basically turned over their whole staff in January, and then Mo Linguist, who played a big part in Johnson's recruitment, just left to take the head coaching job at Buffalo. Do you anticipate that having any impact on Johnson's commitment to Michigan and, maybe opening the door a little more for Ohio State?
Possibly. I'm a relationship guy from all the years I've been in this business. That's what tells the tale. And, I think Linguist, I don't know that he had a great relationship with Johnson because he just got there, but they liked him. It was obvious that he was pretty well respected. Now, Steve Clinkscales is a guy that's pretty familiar to Michigan people. So I think they got a great replacement for Linguist there. And again, you're going to have to develop that relationship. And you're going to have to see what they do on the field. That's going to be the main thing. If they're 6-6 this year, 7-5, something like that, and the natives are howling, that contract Harbaugh signed is an easy one to get out of for Michigan. So, if they tear that thing to the ground this year and decide, look, this is our John Cooper, it's just not going to get any better. And at some point, I think Michigan is going to have to realize it's not going to get any better, and they're trending in the wrong direction. So burn it to the ground. And then I think Will Johnson, it opens wide open. It comes wide open then. And Combs has a great relationship with the kid. And I think if the dad didn't play for Michigan, I think that kid would be committed to Ohio State right now. So if it goes up in flames, then that could be the dad. That could be the sign to him that, I got to look out for my son's future here. This thing is starting from ground zero. And, as much as the dad may have hated Ohio State, we've seen this with the Boren family. I've seen it, Mike McCray on the other side of things. When you're looking to look out for your son and try to provide for his future, the place you went to college all of a sudden is not that important. So I think, if things burn to the ground, I think Ohio State is going to be, in great position to maybe land Will Johnson.
Well, in a year with a bunch of weird, unprecedented stuff going on, Ohio State fans are going to have to root for Michigan to lose. Boy, of all the crazy stuff that could possibly happen this year, just start preparing yourselves now, Ohio State fans. You may have to root against Michigan a few times this fall. I have a feeling you can do it. So, Bill, thank you very much for joining me. The final episode of that Scoop 100 on the Gives in the Bank podcast list, that list should be out today. That'll be 10 through 1. I have a feeling, I don't know for sure, but I have a feeling there's probably going to be a guy who is of note to Ohio State fans right near at or top that list. So you can check that out later on today. But go ahead and subscribe to the Gives in the Bank podcast right now. And if you haven't listened to that whole other series, This will be the 10th episode in that series. It has been a fantastic listen. You will learn so much about the top players in the nation. Great insight, scouting reports, where they're going, who Ohio State is potentially in on, could get in on, the guys who, they have Ohio State in their top 8, and Mark and Bill will tell you, like, no, don't, just ignore it. Nope, it's just a smokescreen. You will come away knowing a whole heck of a lot more than you do right now, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it as much as I do. And make sure you check out all of our other great podcasts. You can find them on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify. Alex Gleitman on his Around the Oval podcast just had Kai Stokes, the Ohio State commit, on this week. That was a great episode. Tony Girdman and I just dropped an episode of Buckeye Weekly yesterday. And you can find all of those shows at Buckeye, just by searching Buckeye Scoop on your podcast platform of choice. You can also find them on YouTube at youtube.com/Buckeye Scoop. We put all of our great stuff there, all those podcasts. Mark Givler down doing a Southern swing right now. He's been talking to a ton of Ohio State commits, Ohio State recruits. Dr. Jaheim Singletary earlier this week. That's up on that YouTube channel right now. That is worth checking out. So youtube.com/Buckeye Scoop. You can check it all out there, and then hit that subscribe button, and you get notified every time we put up a new video as well. And then finally, BuckeyeScoop.com. You'll find that full bank blog that we've been talking about. We hit on a couple of the highlights from it, but you can find the whole thing on our Ask the Insiders board, but you got to be a member. So sign up today at BuckeyeScoop.com. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We will talk to you tomorrow.